Now, under normal circumstances, my videos tend to be very topical. However, this one is more in the way of an open letter from one person to another. A person that I think is in need of some really good, sound advice, as I think they're being led down the primrose path to a place that's not going to be good for them in the end. So, as a service, one human being to another, I'm about to give some advice to somebody. Now, I don't know if they're going to take it or not, but they really need to hear it. And it's this: Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you, do not run for president. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. Now, Governor DeSantis, if you ever happen to see this video, you're probably already saying to yourself, well, who are you to give me advice? I don't know who you are. Well, that's true. You don't know who I am. I'm just a fellow that observes politics. I'm just a social media content creator just trying to make my way through the internet world. But as I say, I am a fellow that watches politics. I've been doing it most, if not all, of my life. And I can look at a whole bunch of factors and begin to realize this is just not your moment. There are people whispering in your ear right now, a bunch of sweet nothings, trying to get you to do something that is not in your long-term best interest politically. But if you don't believe me, let me lay out some arguments that you ought to think about long and hard before you do what you're proposed to be doing. Let's start with the polling. Take a look at this. This is the Real Clear Politics average of polls. This is everything that's come out from February going forward. The first 8 polls are the ones that have been done the most recent. Now I'll flip to these real quick. All those polls show you behind Donald Trump. Your best case scenario is you're down 15 points to Trump. Worst case scenario, you're down almost 50 points to Trump. Now, it's a long way to go between now and the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. I'll agree with you on that point. But, sir, the hour is getting very late for you. If that news report from NBC News is correct, and you're thinking about announcing an exploratory committee around the middle of this month, and then maybe an announcement sometime in June, well, guess what? If you announce in June, you're down to 7 months. Now, let's just take that percentage of, let's just say best case scenario that NBC is right with their most recent poll, that you're only down by 15 points to Trump. Well, the longer that you wait to make a formal announcement about your candidacy, that 15% is going to get more and more locked into Trump. Between then and now, you might shave a few points off of it, but Trump's still going to have a lead going into the Iowa caucuses. And that lead's going to be locked in. You won't shake people loose from him. Now, there is another consideration about those polls, and this is the thing I think you really need to look at. You'll notice in this group of polls everything from February till now. You'll also notice something else. The last poll before the indictment came down from New York City District Attorney Alvin Bragg had you behind by 13. After that indictment came down, Trump took off like a rocket. 24, 31, 33, 29, 37. He just kept going up. The base of the Republican vote consolidated around Trump because they perceived, quite appropriately might I add, that he was being persecuted. And with all due respect, sir, your cheesy little comment about, well, I don't know what it's like to pay a porn star for their silence, didn't help you in that moment. What would have helped you was a full-throated defense of Trump. but you didn't offer that. And you got people to perceive you as establishment Republican. You didn't do yourself any favors on that day. So the polling is one warning to you, you ought not be doing this. But there is another one, and I'll get into it in just a second. Now, I said a moment ago that the polls were one big warning sign as to why you ought not be doing this, Governor. The other consideration is the fact that there are a lot of major, big-time GOP donors who are getting very nervous about the idea of putting money on your nose at the $2 window. Now, part of that is just general nervousness. If they're going to donate that kind of money, they want to make sure they're giving it to the right person. But the other part of it, no offense, sir, is of your own doing. In other words, if they're getting nervous or they're having second thoughts, your recent performance on certain matters is giving them pause. Now, if you don't want to believe me, that's fine. But I'll just show you something that you really ought to think about. Take a look at this. Governor DeSantis, this is a headline from NBC News. Quote, I think he's in trouble. Growing number of Ron DeSantis donors and allies hope for a shakeup. In an article written by Natasha Korecki and Matt Dixon, as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis prepares to jump into the presidential race, a growing number of supporters say he is sorely in need of a change in strategy if he's going to have any chance of defeating Donald Trump for the GOP nomination. Interviews with more than a dozen donors, elected officials, and people close to his organization reveal that, while not a universal perspective, there is a frustrated contingent of Republicans who were open or excited about a DeSantis candidacy but fear the door is closing, in large part because of recent policy decisions, and who see no change in strategy from DeSantis. Many of them spoke on condition of anonymity to speak frankly. Quote, I think he's in trouble, said Ron Gidwitz, a major GOP fundraiser who served as the National Republican Senatorial Campaigns Committee Finance Chair and was a Trump-era ambassador, but is undecided for 2024. There's a lot of people who are concerned about DeSantis and Trump for that matter. They'd like to have an alternative to Trump that can win, but is DeSantis that person? A person with knowledge of DeSantis' operation describes struggles in mastering interpersonal skills, building an operation, and focusing on effective policy messaging. Complaints are streaming in from donors who feel brushed off by DeSantis or left in the lurch after they are asked to assemble a fundraising event, but then never hear back from someone in his circle. Trump is proving to be far more adept at winning early endorsements with his personal touch, wooing them with calls and personal meetings. Now, you might sit there, Governor, and say, well, that's just NBC News. That's mainstream media. You can't believe anything they're saying. Oh, really? Well, I don't know. Maybe the proof is truly in the pudding. And if it is, then here's the proof. This is from Newsweek magazine. Headline, Ron DeSantis just lost another donor. We read into the article. Has lost a second donor in 2 weeks after a New York-based billionaire who supported Donald Trump in his 2020 presidential bid ruled out supporting the Florida governor in any potential run for the White House. In an interview on Wednesday, John Katsimatidis, supermarket and property magnate with an estimated $4.1 billion fortune, claimed he was pulling any future funding of the Republican over a lack of access. Quote, why would I support somebody to become president of the United States that doesn't return phone calls? That news came after major GOP donor Thomas Peterffy, a financier and the 65th richest man in the world with a net worth of $25 billion, said he had put donations to DeSantis on hold over his stance on abortion and book banning. While DeSantis has yet to declare his candidacy, he is widely seen as a potential leading contender for the 2024 presidential Republican primaries. Now, I will say something in your defense, and I think it's a fair observation. This argument that's being floated around that your positions on social issues, particularly as it relates to the state of Florida, is causing people to give pause about whether they should give you money, well, I think that's been historically true of certain major GOP donors. They don't like getting into the weeds when it comes to social issues. And let's be honest, you've been out front and very prominent about certain things in Florida that you're doing related to Disney, related to woke, etc. I think those things are to your credit. But it's given these people pause. to want to give you money. Now, maybe that's on them, but whether it's on them, whether it's on you, sort of doesn't really matter. They're not going to pony up the money. Or if they do pony up the money, they're not going to pony up as much money as you need to defeat Donald Trump. You're going to need one really big war chest. And let's just be perfectly honest. Even if you've got that war chest, even if you run campaign ad after campaign ad after campaign ad, are you really going to shake the base of the Republican Party vote loose from Donald Trump? If you don't believe me, go talk to Jeb Bush, who spent about $100 million back in 2016, and he got 3 delegates out of the whole thing and dropped out of the race shortly after New Hampshire. So the polls are one problem, the money's becoming another problem, and then there's the practical reality of a primary campaign and a general election campaign, which we'll get into in just a second. Now, let's talk about the practical realities of a primary campaign and then a general election campaign for president. And before we do that, I think something very important needs to be said to you, Governor DeSantis. And it's this. The people that are wanting you to run, and I could name names, but you know who they are because they've been talking to you for months. I have to tell you something, and this is just one human being to another here. These people are more interested in seeing Donald Trump defeated than they are in seeing you elected. Now, that's a harsh thing to say because probably some of these people are your friends. But the truth of the matter is, they really don't care about you. They do care about making sure Donald Trump doesn't get anywhere near the presidency again. And they're going to use you to make that happen. Now, as to the campaign itself, let's stop and think about some true realities here, okay? If you get into this primary and you lose, you're going to be the Scott Walker of 2024. Now, if you think back to 2016, Scott Walker, former Republican governor of Wisconsin, impeccable political resume. People had him lined up. They were measuring the drapes for the Oval Office because they thought he was a shoo-in to make it. And then he went nose to nose with Donald Trump, got off one cutesy little line about not needing an apprentice but somebody that's ready for the job, and his campaign tanked shortly thereafter. Look, I don't know how you feel about Donald Trump personally or politically, but you go up against this guy, go toe-to-toe with him, and if you lose, you're done politically. Go ask Scott Walker. Go talk to Ted Cruz. You will never get near the Republican nomination for the presidency again. And that is because the Trump base, the America First, the MAGA crowd, they're going to remember this. And they're going to make sure you don't ever get near it. You're going to damage yourself so badly that you're going to be radioactive. No one's going to want to touch you. Now, let's assume for a moment, on the other hand, that you did go nose to nose with Donald Trump. You managed to defeat him. Well, in a general election against Joe Biden, 15 to 20% of the Republican vote is gone. Because Trump's voters, whether you like them, dislike them, agree with them, disagree with them, they're not going to vote for you because you're going to be remembered as the guy that took down Donald Trump. And they're going to go like this at the mention of your name. They're done. They're out. And if you don't believe me, go look at the votes from 2018 and 2022. Oh, you did well in Florida, but nationally, where Donald Trump is not on the ballot, people don't come out and vote. Whether it's right, whether it's wrong, doesn't matter. You will not get that particular portion of the Republican coalition to come out and vote for you because you took down their guy. But let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that you managed to keep that 15 to 20% engaged and involved in a general election against Joe Biden. Well, guess what? No offense, sir, But there are people and certain groups you're never going to be able to reach. Donald Trump can. Now, you may not like that fact, and you may disagree with me, but that's the practical reality. He'll get Hispanics, he'll get African Americans, he'll get non-college educated whites, he'll get women, more so than you will, no offense, sir, but there are groups that Trump will get, you just won't. And part of that is you're perceived as being establishment Republican. Whether that's right, whether that's wrong, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter how much in campaign ads you spend. You're not going to shake that perception in a general election against Joe Biden, which means your dogfight is going to be around the Great Lakes. You'll do well in the South. You may do well in the Southwest. But everything from Pennsylvania over to Minnesota is going to be a steeper and harder climb for you for a lot of different reasons. So, yeah, when I say that there are people more interested in making sure Trump is defeated than you are elected, and they're not doing you any favors but trying to talk you into this, think about everything I just said, because everything I have said is true, and it is the practical reality. Realize that I'm sending out this message to you at the 11th hour, Governor DeSantis. And I realize that a lot of things are in motion right now. And maybe it's too late. Maybe you are so committed to this that you are going to go through with it. But I am hoping, praying even, that somewhere along the way, your political common sense is overriding your ambition and you're still willing to listen. Now, like a lot of Americans, I don't have a problem with the fact that you're ambitious. I think you should be if you're going to be in politics. Ambition is a good thing, but not when ambition starts overriding what ought to be a consideration, and that consideration is this: the best interests of the country. Right now, we've got to put a candidate forward who gives us the best chance to win. And sir, with all due respect to you, right now it's just not your time. You're not that person. There are things that Donald Trump can do you can't. Now, don't get me wrong. I've got my problems with Trump. Okay, there are certain things he does that just drives me up the wall. But on the other hand, from an electoral standpoint, from a political standpoint, and from a persuasion standpoint, there are things Donald Trump can do right now you can't. Now, there's time. And what I'm getting at is this. If you sit this one out, no matter what happens in 2024, this is Donald Trump's last ride. Win, lose, doesn't matter. This is his last campaign. You're 44 years old. You've got a great future ahead of you. My personal advice? Finish out your term as governor. Sit this one out as far as the presidential election is concerned. You'll have time to finish your second term in office, go out high note, burnish your credentials, work on certain things from an issue skill set to a interpersonal skill set, if I may be so bold as to say, and then position yourself as the potential heir apparent to the MAGA movement in 2028. Now, does that mean you're going to be the nominee in 2028? I have no idea. But I just think from, honestly, all things being equal, looking at all the factors right now, you're better served waiting till then than to jump into this thing now, politically damage yourself such that it's unrecoverable. Like I said, you could wind up being the Scott Walker of 2024. Somebody who ran and will never be able to run again. So when your friends are telling you, oh, Ron, we think you'd be the best candidate, we've got your back, we're supporting you, think about everything I've just said and then ask yourself a question. Why is a complete stranger willing to tell me all this and my supposed friends are not? But that's just me, Governor. Anyway, I hope you take my advice. Not because I dislike you. I think you're okay. There's a lot of things about your governorship down in Florida I think you've done very well, and I hope you continue doing them well. But like I said, from one person to another, I'm just giving you some free advice. And with that, sir, and to my audience, I'll catch you guys next time.